Let's talk professionally for a few minutes.
You are Locked On Trojans, your daily podcast on the USC Trojans. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Fight on, everyone. I'm your host, Mark Holkin, and thank you for making Locked On USC part of the Locked On Network, your first listen every day, whether you're watching this show on YouTube, wherever you want to download your podcast. This show is always free, and this show will always appreciate your support. And today's episode, we've got a special guest coming back. His name's Max Chadwick. He wanted to come back, so that's a good sign. And he is he's a writer over there at at Pro Football Focus, college football analyst, as well as he hosts his own show, Pro Football Focus's College Football Show. Max, thanks for coming back.
Yeah, Mark, thanks for having me on again. And yeah, it's kind of a mouthful that you say it out loud, the Pro Football Focus College Football Show. We kind of just call it the PFF College Football Show to try to make it a little bit easier to digest. But yeah, man, it's really it's an honor to be back with you. And I'm excited to talk about some USC Trojans with you today.
Trust me, it'll be PFF from here on forward. All right, so I want to talk about the 24 team, obviously. Their prospects as they're kicking off their inaugural season going into the big conference. By the way, I need your opinion on this. Is it the big conference? Is it the Big Ten conference? There's 18 teams. I'm stuck on the big. So where do you fall on this real quick?
I've never heard it called the Big before. I'm still calling it the Big Ten until, obviously, if they ever change the name. I don't think they ever will. We haven't had 10 teams in the Big Ten in like decades anyway. So even before the 4 Pac-12 teams, just so I decided to join the conference. So I think it's always going to be the Big Ten, even if we have 40 teams in it at the end of the day. I still call it the Big Ten as of right now.
Well, we've got our first disagreement because it's the big conference. So anyways, let's talk about the offense in this segment first. We'll start with the wide receivers. Around this time last year, you kind of postulated that the Trojans had the 6th best wide receiver core in the country. I've already seen one national analyst make the claim that USC is outside of the top 10. And I understand that they've lost some guys to the NFL, and they're much younger. But do you agree that USC does not have a top 10 wide receiver group, considering that 2023 wide receiver class?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I actually, I put together already my rankings for the quarterback rooms in college football and running back units. Unfortunately, I've not done receiving core. That actually is going to be done next week. Okay. So I'm excited to get that done. So I can't exactly tell you if I'm going to have USC in my top 10 as of right now, but I can tell you they are very, very talented, right? I mean, Zachariah Branch is back there for another year. I think he's going to be one of the breakout stars in college football next year. Deuce Robinson was the number 1 tight end coming out of high school, former 5-star recruit. He's actually been kind of their X-receiver for them and kind of like a lot like a Drake London role. I think a lot of people will be reminded by Drake London by seeing a massive target like that, like Deuce Robinson playing X-receiver. Kyron Hudson is back as well for another year. And then obviously Lake McCree is a pretty good tight end as well. So I think it's a very, very talented group. Obviously, you got a couple 5-star sophomores that are expected to make some big, big jumps this upcoming season. Makai Lemon is expected to make another big jump too. Xavier Jordan, Jacoby Lane, Jaden Richardson transfers in. I mean, there are a lot of guys to get excited about in that receiving core right now. It is a very unproven one, but I think it's a very, very talented one right now. So I can't tell you exactly if I'm going to have them as a top 10 receiving core in the country, but they are very, very talented. So I still think it's definitely a strength of this team heading into next season.
Yeah, obviously everybody's last look at them was, besides the spring game, was that Holiday Bowl game. And, that's kind of when they flashed, when all 4 of those sophomores kind of like, hey, look at us. We might be losing Taj Washington and Brendan Rice to the NFL. And you mentioned Kyron Hudson, but when you've got a player, I think you call him the X button on, he's a human joystick, Zachariah Branch. Yeah. You mentioned Deuce Robinson. In my opinion, I think who might end up being the best of the bunch was Jacoby Lane. He was really underrated, and what he showed up in the Holiday Bowl, he has those leadership qualities. So that's someone I want you to keep an eye on this year. And for me, Makai Lemon is just another Amon-Ra St. Brown. He's kind of that clone. And when you have somebody like that on your roster, you've got a pretty good wide receiver. So I'll let you rank them. I'll look forward to that when it comes out. We'll see where you place them. You had mentioned you'd already done the quarterbacks. What is your thought on USC's quarterback situation? Miller Moss is obviously, I think the front runner to be the starter this year. And then Lincoln Riley kind of got in a little bit of a tug of war there during the offseason, trying to get Jaden Mayava to come play for him and not go over to Georgia. What are your thoughts on USC's quarterback situation?
Yeah, that was a very interesting move, right? Jaden Mayava, obviously former starting quarterback in UNLV and now coming to a USC guy. So I'm excited to see this quarterback room shake out. And I think Miller Moss obviously looked fantastic in that Holiday Bowl against Louisville. I think there were 5 or 6 touchdown passes in that game. And, he's a guy that I'm really excited to see as kind of the starter next year and finally take over as the guy. And obviously Lincoln Riley has never had a bad starting quarterback in his life, really. Actually, in his head coaching career, I should say, has never had a bad starting quarterback. I mean, he started off with Baker Mayfield, who won a Heisman Trophy and was the number 1 overall pick in the draft. Right after that was Kyler Murray, Heisman Trophy winner, number 1 overall pick in the draft. Then you had Jalen Hurts, who was a Heisman runner-up and 2nd-round pick in the draft and starting quarterback in the NFL, one of the highest paid quarterbacks in the NFL as of right now. Then you had Spencer Rattler, who obviously had to transfer out of there, but was a very successful quarterback at Oklahoma for a little bit, had a really good last year at South Carolina, and he just got drafted by the New Orleans Saints. So he's an NFL quarterback too. And then obviously Caleb Williams these past couple of years, who was a Heisman Trophy winner and number 1 overall pick in the NFL draft. So you have 3 number 1 overall picks, 3 Heisman Trophy winners. One of them was a Heisman runner-up, and 4 of them, I think I'm counting that right. 4 of them are NFL starters now. So it is he's never had a bad starting quarterback. And we'll see if Miller Moss can reach those highs as those other guys did. I'm not sure he will, but I think he's really talented. And I think he's in a really good situation right now with that receiving core and obviously in that offense to really take over and be really good. And then obviously Jaden Mayava is a really capable number 2 quarterback. And I think it's a really interesting move by them to bring him in as their backup quarterback with Malachi Nelson obviously leaving to go to Boise State. So I'm excited to see Miller Moss next year as a starter and see if he can live up to the highs that previous Lincoln Riley quarterbacks have done in their careers.
And obviously for any of the offense to work, to look good, I think the biggest question mark on the offensive side of the ball is probably going to be the offensive line. I think they're fine at running back. In fact, I think they're really talented. Tight end, they've got the players. They're young. Can Lake McCree come back healthy in time for fall is the question. But the O-line, they were able to convince Jonah Monheim to come back for another season. They're moving him. He's going to be their starting center. And now you've got a young 2nd-year player starting at left tackle, Elijah Page. You've got Mason Murphy, who I think is ready to seize the opportunity at right tackle. And then you have Emmanuel Prignon, left guard, and Alani Noah, 2nd-year player, starting at right guard. Behind those guys, it's pretty much freshmen. How do you think USC is going to be able to do this year? Because if they can maintain that starting front 5, everything's going to be great. And they also have Gino Quinones coming back. But that's the question mark. So I'll shut up now and you can answer.
Yeah, I think it's a huge question mark, right? And I think Jonah Monheim is he was one of the best tackles in college football in my rankings, and obviously now he's moving inside to center. So it's going to be interesting to see how he does there, because obviously he's played guard, he's played tackle, he excelled at both of them. Now he's going to play center this year. We'll see how he does there. I mean, he's just a really all-around dominant offensive lineman. I think he's one of the better offensive linemen that we have in college football right now, honestly. So great leader there. But like I said, there's a lot of unknowns after that, right? They lose some starters to the draft and to graduation and stuff. And I'm excited to see guys like Elijah Page. I think he's a talented player. He's a former top 15 tackle coming out of high school. So I'm excited to see him as a left tackle next year. But yeah, it's a lot like the receiving core, not as talented, but there's a lot of unproven studs, right? A lot of unproven players, I should say, right now. And we'll see how they do meshing together. I like Emmanuel Prignon. I think he's a good player. I'm excited to see how this offensive line gels next year. And it's kind of been one of the weaknesses of USC. Most people say in the last few years. And I think this year it's going to be interesting to see how those 5 kind of gel together and see if they can stay healthy all year also too.
Yeah, one of the biggest differences that we've noticed since Coach Riley took over the program and Josh Henson has been the offensive line coach is they've really been focusing on the size, getting these guys much bigger because, they're moving to the Big Ten Conference and that, size matters up front. So I think that's what people question is, they're inexperienced, but when you look at the size of these guys, I mean, they're big. They look like they're college ready. So, again, if they can stay healthy, I don't think it'll be an issue. For me, I think what it comes down to, and we'll talk about that in the third segment, is can Lincoln Riley change his offensive philosophy? Can he be a more conservative offensive play caller. And he kind of alluded to that after the spring game, how they're going to use the quarterback this year compared to in the past. And it was more about staying on schedule. Whatever I call, let's run that play rather than Caleb Williams doing Caleb Williams type of thing. So I want you to kind of keep that in the back of your head when we get to the third segment when we're talking about that. But we're going to talk about the defense in the next segment. But first, we got to do this. I remember being a big-time Laker fan and going to the playoffs back at the Great Western Forum, Staples Center. This is when Magic was doing this thing. Kobe was part of the Lakers. If your team is still in the playoffs, then with killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views for your seat, and the best price guarantee, Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying tickets. You can see the view from your seat before you buy, so you know exactly what to expect when you arrive. And with the all-in prices, you get to see your price total up front. That way you know you're getting a great deal before you even check out. And you can buy your seconds and tickets in 2 seconds, 2 taps, and you're done. Trojan fans, have you gotten your tickets for Vegas yet? Well, if you haven't, Game Time has deals right up to the start of the event and even an hour after it starts. It's the place to find last-minute seats. And the Game Time guarantee means you'll always get the best price. And if you find tickets in the same section and row for less, guess what? Game Time is going to credit you the difference by 110%. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Again, terms apply. Create an account and redeem code LOCKED like David, O and like Nancy for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day and everybody's screaming and yelling at you? Well, make the switch over to Locked On Sports today. It's a free 24/7 sports streaming channel programmed for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news. And it's streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. All right, so first question for you, Max. I have to ask this question. When Eric Henderson came on board, Lincoln Riley brought him on, Coach Riley said he was going to make defense the number one priority going forward, building this roster. And Eric Henderson was kind of the cherry on the top on that coaching staff. Why is USC still looking for that impact guy in the transfer portal to help on the defensive side of the ball, on the line and on the inside? Did money really dominate that specific market?
Yeah, I think it did. I think that money dominates almost every market now. You look at the transfer portal. So I think there's a few reasons for that. I think there's just a lot of guys that ended up just at other schools that USC obviously could have used. And there were some really, really talented players in the portal this year along the defensive line. Guys like Nick Scorton come to mind, who I think is going to be maybe a top 10 to 15 pick in the NFL draft, the edge defender, formerly at Purdue, now at Texas A&M. And obviously Texas A&M has no shortage of NIL boosters there to help them out. And they got other guys like Prince Demon Mielin, went from Florida to Ole Miss. Walter Nolan went from Texas A&M to Ole Miss. Those are a couple guys that could be first-round picks. So I think obviously USC fans are probably a little disappointed by them not getting any true superstars in the portal that they were available. They got Nate Clifton, who should be a starting player for them this year from Vanderbilt, but. Other than that, I mean, at least they did a really good job in the secondary. I thought of bringing a couple of really nice players in the portal, but along the defensive line, obviously they only brought in really Clifton to help out there. So yeah, I think I'm not really sure why they missed out on some guys this year. Obviously, USC isn't known as a defensive powerhouse. I'm sure there's a lot of those guys wanted to go to a team that was more defensive focused than what Lincoln Riley has right now. But obviously, Lincoln Riley is doing everything he can, hiring guys like Antonlynn as the defensive coordinator. Who I think is a really, really good hire at D coordinator. Right. I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see how maybe after this year, if they really do improve dramatically defensively, then maybe some more top guys in the portal will look at that and be like, okay, now I can trust that I'm going to go there and my potential will be realized there if I go to USC. And obviously USC being in LA is a very, very attractive destination. They don't hurt in NIL either. They do very well there. So yeah, I think it's just kind of a wait and see mode for a lot of the top defensive players in the portal. It's just, okay, let's see how USC does before I really want to commit there and commit to playing there and trying to put my potential NFL career in their hands. I think a lot of the guys would rather go to a more defensive focused team, in the SEC or something like that before they go to USC as of right now.
Which, well, ironically, USC is doing really well recruiting the high school level right now for their class of 2025. So that's why I was asking the question: why are the guys who have experience in college already and know the name Eric Henderson and how we can maybe, kind of put that final touch on them, getting them ready for the NFL? Where's that disconnect? But like you said, maybe they want to wait and see. The high school guys don't want to wait. They're ready to get in line. They're ready to come aboard. So to me, I found that really curious. I wanted to just get another opinion on it. Mm-hmm. You mentioned D'Anton absolutely. That whole defensive staff. I mean, for Coach Riley to be able to say, "Hey, Coach Lynn, I saw what you did at UCLA. I saw what you did against us. Why don't you cross the tracks?" What kind of impact can D'Anton have in 1 year at USC when you look at the roster, what he has, and compared to what USC's defense looked like for these last couple of years?
Yeah, he truly was spectacular. In this past year, I thought he was one of the best defensive coordinators in college football. And speaking of the defensive line, UCLA had one of, if not the best defensive line in college football last year too. They were truly, truly dominant in a lot of ways. And UCLA the year before, he honestly was like a guy that. UCLA, was a defense that was like not really that good the year before. I think they're like 100 or something like that in efficiency before he got there. And then the very next year, they're like 5th or 4th in efficiency or something like that. So they went from like a bad defense in college football to one of the top 5 in college football. And obviously they had some really, really talented players like Latu Latu, who's a top 15 pick in the NFL draft. But I think Lynn deserves a lot of credit for that. So I thought it was one of the best hires of the entire offseason was D'Anton Lynn going from UCLA to USC. I think Lincoln Riley, if he really wants to become more defensive focused, he really nailed that hire. I think it's a great hire. It was one of my favorite hires of the offseason was D'Anton Lynn to USC. So I think they A+ job by Lincoln Riley identifying him as a guy to target and bring him in too.
Yeah, and then he was even able to convince a 2-time national championship head coach at the FCS level, Matt Entz, to kind of say, "Hey, why don't you step down? Come be my linebacker coach, assistant defensive coordinator." I mean, you don't see that happen very often. So, and Matt Entz was very upfront about it. He said, "Hey, look, I want to be a head coach at the FBS level, and I was told this is what I need to do." So, what kind of impact can he have at USC, and how long should USC anticipate holding on to somebody like that?
Yeah, he's going to have a big impact, I think, on the Trojans next year as a former, national championship winning head coach. I mean, all that. So he's a guy that obviously was, North Dakota State was a really successful program under him, honestly. So I definitely think he's a guy that he can definitely be relied on to coach up those linebackers really well and help out D'Anton Lynn on the defensive side of the ball as well. I mean, like I said, he's a 2-time FCS national champion. So he's really, really an impressive head coach, and now going to an assistant coach and not even the defensive coordinator. And that's, again, like a hell of a hire by Lincoln Riley to get him to join the staff. So, I like that hire a lot too. And I think the USC linebackers will be better off for it, getting a talented coach like Matt Entz in there to help out D'Anton Lynn.
Yeah, I can't tell you how much everyone's looking forward to just a new philosophy where guys are just lining up and they actually know what they're doing. So I think if they can just accomplish that, USC goes from being a really bad defense to just being serviceable.
Yeah.
And, D'Anton Lynn and the rest of the defensive coaching staff can really put their mark on it. Then you go from bad to serviceable to, hey, these guys are pretty good. So we'll see what happens. And then the last thing I want to talk about on the defense, the secondary. I think Doug Belk is really underrated, and he's got some really tall guys back there. You look at the cornerbacks, they average like 6'1.5" to 6'2" across the board. How's that going to work in the big conference?
Yeah, obviously there's some bigger receivers you got to deal with in the Big Ten, so I think that's obviously one reason why they have such big DBs. But also, I think it's still go for talent, man. They got some talented players in there. I think out of the 5 starters in the secondary, 3 of them are going to be transfers, in my opinion. And John Humphrey coming in from UCLA, who's a talented corner for them, is going to be one of the starting outside corners, in my opinion. And 2 safeties, in my opinion, will also both be transfers. And Kamari Ramsey, also from UCLA, who I'm a huge fan of, and then Achille Arnold too from Oregon State, who was a really, really good player for Oregon State last year too as a strong safety. So yeah, I think those 3 are going to be brand new starters for USC in their defense. And then I think Jacoby Covington probably going to be the other outside corner for USC, and then probably Jalen Smith is the nickel corner is what I would expect. But I think I'm excited about those 3 transfers for sure. I think that safety room at USC is going to be really, really talented with Kamari Ramsey and Achille Arnold there. So yeah, I'm excited to see how that secondary really gels next year as they go into year 1 of the Big Ten.
Yeah, that is by far the deepest position group on that side of the ball is definitely the safeties and the cornerbacks. One last question on the defense. Can Lincoln Riley find his defensive chops? Does he have that in him?
I think hiring Antonlynn and just saying, hey, man, go handle that side of the ball, and I'll make sure I handle my side of the ball on offense. Like, that's the best way you could go about it. Obviously, as an offensive-minded head coach, he's been one of the best offensive minds in college football for the last several years. We mentioned before, 3 Heisman Trophy winners at quarterback, 3 number 1 overall picks at quarterback, 4 starters at quarterback. Clearly, there are quarterbacks in college football who love playing, and for talented quarterbacks in college football love playing for Lincoln Riley, right? So I think as long as Lincoln just handles his side of the ball and still has a top 5 offense in the country year after year, as he's always done, and then Antonlynn just say, hey, man, I'll give you the resources to succeed. I'll get you some top players. We'll give you the money you need and all that. I think that's just the way he's going to go about it, right? It's just hire a really, really talented defensive-minded coach to take over the defense and make it as close as you can to the offense, right? As successful as offense. So it'll never probably be that way, considering how dominant USC's been in offense the last several years now with Lincoln Riley there. But I think, or at least several years when Lincoln Riley's been a head coach at Oklahoma and USC, but I think he's going about it the right way, just getting the best defensive coordinator he possibly can, and just saying, hey, your show, go ahead and take over. And getting Matt Entz to help him out too is a big get. So I think Lincoln Riley, I think hiring those 2 for him is a kind of a telltale sign that he's kind of willing to let those 2 kind of take that defense over while he handles the offensive side of the ball, in my opinion.
I'll tell you what, if he can just, be hands off on the defense and just say, hey, you guys do your thing, I'll do my thing, it could be a pretty good season for USC, but we'll find out. We're going to talk a little bit more about that coming up. Okay, so I had kind of set the stage a little bit earlier, asking you, can Coach Riley be a more conservative-minded coach on offense? And what I mean by that is, people have the impression, and I think if you look at it, you talked about his quarterbacks. He likes to air it out. He likes to throw the ball around. But can he dial it back? Can he be a more balanced guy on offense? Moving into the big conference where, everyone likes to talk about their defenses, will Lincoln Riley still try and force his offensive philosophy, or will he become more, NFL professional type, I guess, more balanced?
Oh, good question. I don't know. I don't think it's going to drastically change a lot from his offense. I think you saw some of the holes of that offense this year that we frankly had never seen before in the Lincoln Riley offense. Yeah, I think it'll be interesting to see how he adjusts this year, because I don't think, and I love Miller Moss, I do think he could be a breakout star in college football, but let's face it, I don't think he's as talented as Caleb Williams. He's not as talented as right? You're right. I mean, exactly. Like Caleb Williams, will he be a number 1 overall pick like Caleb Williams, Kyler Murray, or Baker Mayfield, or will he win a Heisman Trophy? Probably not as of right now. Now we'll see, because the next year's quarterback class is wide open in college football, so there is opportunity there for Miller Moss to really just have a breakout year if he really wants to. So never say never for a Lincoln Riley quarterback, obviously, but yeah, I think it'll be smart for him to kind of just run an offense and tell Miller, hey, run this offense the way it's designed, and obviously don't try to be a hero out there like Caleb was doing last year, for better or for worse. Honestly, there are some plays where he needed to be, and there's some plays where Caleb obviously went for the home run when he should have been taking the single or double, right? And I think the key for USC's offense next year is to tell Miller Moss, hey, take the singles and doubles. Don't swing for the fences every time, because then we can get into trouble and start relying on our defense, which last year USC could not rely on his defense for anything. So I think that's the key for them this year. And I think obviously getting a guy like Woody Marks at running back, who's a really, really talented running back from Mississippi State, I think it's a really, really good get for them. The offensive line has to gel together. That's a really big question mark, but you're gonna have guys that can win downfield. I mean, Zachariah Branch is one of the fastest players in college football, probably. Deuce Robinson's a major, target downfield that you can use as well. It's gonna be interesting to see how they use that offense next year. But I think the key for me for USC's offense is just take like I said, take the easy plays when they're there. Don't force it. Just play your game. Run the offense the way I designed it, and we'll hopefully win from there. So I think that's probably where you're going to see more from USC this year, rather than the hero ball that we saw a lot last year.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think what we saw in that bowl game, there's a lot of play action. The thing that really stuck out with me with Miller, besides his 6 touchdowns against only 1 interception, was he wasn't playing behind the sticks. In other words, when pressure got to him, as you said, he wasn't trying to be a hero. He would just, put the ball on the ground, play the next down. Don't play behind the sticks. Don't do anything stupid. And that's the cerebral part of Miller's game. So I agree with you. Just run the play. And we saw what happened in the bowl game. And that's what Lincoln Riley was referring to after the spring, is we're going to be using the quarterbacks a little bit differently than you've been accustomed to this year. And I think it's going to be a little bit more balanced, a little bit more play action, using the running backs like a Woody Marks that you spoke about. But you've got the other 3 youngsters as well, and in Quentin Joyner and Marion Peterson. And then the freshman, Brian Jackson, when you look at him, I see Lendale White. I mean, he already has that NFL body. He wears number 21 as well, so it helps. So, yeah, that's why I asked that question. And when you look at the offenses in the big conference, everybody talks about their great defenses. Well, I saw what happened to Iowa's great defense when they got into their bowl game. Same thing with Penn State. It happens. I think USC might be the type of team that, and Oregon as well, and Washington when they get up to speed, to kind of, maybe they'll have their own influence on the conference. I don't think it's going to be as that 3 yards in a cloud of dust and Iowa's got the greatest defense in the world type of thing. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I think USC is capable of making some noise in the Big Ten next year, right? I think they're going to be a top 20 team in college football. I don't think they're going to be the best team out of the 4 teams that are joining the Big Ten. I think Oregon is a top 3 team in the country, honestly, and I think Oregon's well positioned to be a national title contender next year. And I don't think USC is quite on that level yet, but I think USC is still capable of putting up some, some really good fights against some really good teams next year. So I think USC's, obviously the drop off will be pretty big after losing a guy like Caleb Williams, but I still think this is a really talented offense. And I still think, I know I've been saying this for the last few years now, but I do think this is the year where we're going to see a big improvement from USC's defense, especially with some of the talented guys they have in the back end of their defense too. So yeah, I'm excited to see what the Trojans can do next year. I think, like I said, I think they're a top 20 team, and I think certainly competing for a playoff spot next year is well within the cards for the Trojans, I think.
Yeah. And the last thing I want to talk about with you before we get out of here is their upcoming schedule. We're going to do a way too early outlook. How many wins, how many losses do you see on their schedule? And I want you to keep this in mind, that USC and LSU, they kick off against each other to open the season in Las Vegas. They are kind of a mirror image of each other. They both replaced their defensive coaching staffs. They both were hitting the transfer portal hard for that interior help on the defensive line. They're both bringing in, sort of new quarterbacks. How do you see that game playing out?
Yeah, that's funny, right? They're both, like I said, both replacing the quarterbacks who were both Heisman Trophy winners and both number 1 and number 2 overall picks in the NFL draft. So that's going to be really interesting, that game. I think they are very, very mirroring. Like I said, I think it's a great point by you that they are kind of mirror images of each other in a lot of ways. And I think LSU's hoping that their defense is going to be a lot better next year. USC is hoping for the same thing. They're both breaking in new quarterbacks, both breaking in kind of new look-ish receiving cores. LSU more so than USC. So yeah, I think that's a really good point. But I'm excited to see how that game plays out. That's definitely one of the top games of Week 1. I think LSU, I give a slight edge to right now. I think they have a little. I like some of their players a lot on that team. I think their offensive line is really good. I like Garrett Nussmeier, their quarterback. I think the receiving core has some really, really intriguing options too. And then defensively, I think they still have some really, really good players. Like Carol Perkins at linebacker is still one of the top defensive players in college football, in my opinion. So I think LSU, I'm going to give the slight edge to in that game right now, because it's a neutral site game. But that's definitely one of the top games of Week 1, and I think it's going to be an unbelievable game, and I'm excited to see who comes out in that one.
Yeah, I actually think it's going to go overtime. That's how close I think it's going to be. So give me your prediction. You don't have to tell me who USC will beat and who they'll lose to. Just give me final record.
Okay, I'm looking at it right now.
If you want to throw in the last, you want to be bold, you want to be brave.
Yeah, I can throw in who I think they're going to – I'm looking at the schedule right now. I don't want to get your viewers to hate me here, but this is a tough schedule. I will say my final prediction is 8-4, I will say right now. I know they're going to hate me for that. I know. And I do think there's room for them to be better than that. Trust me. There are some of these games I think are complete toss-ups. But like I said, I think the LSU game is a close loss. At Michigan is going to be really tough. Michigan's got a really amazing defense next year. Going to be a top 3 defense in the country, at least, in my opinion. So that's going to be tough for them. It's also in the big house, too. So I'm going to take Michigan in that one. I think Penn State, I think, is a better team. I know it's in USC, but I think Penn State has a really good defense, and then also got some intriguing offensive talent. I think they're definitely question marks on offense for sure for Penn State, but I think Penn State is a top 10 team right now, whereas I think USC is more of a top 20 team. So that's another one. And then the final game, I think they're going to lose. Again, Notre Dame, last game of the season in USC, I know, but Notre Dame, again, maybe a top 3 defense in college football, in my opinion. I think next year it's amazing how many star players they have on defense. And then offensively, they have some really intriguing transfers coming in too. So, those are the 4 games I think USC is going to lose. It's going to be that's a heck of a schedule, man. That is a really difficult schedule. I don't think 8-4 really, justifies how good USC actually is. I think they're a better team than 8-4. But with that schedule, that's my final record prediction for them right now is 8-4. So definitely a disappointing year, and obviously it's a step up from 7-5 last year. But definitely a little bit of a disappointing year for USC in their first year in the Big Ten. But like I said, there are almost all those games I think are complete toss-ups in my opinion. So I think they definitely could be a lot better than 8-4. But yeah, that's at least what I think they're going to be at right now.
Well, I think it's great that you have a lot of faith in James Franklin because that guy finds a way to lose games. And look, I've never watched a college football game before where one team's offense said, you know what, we're going to run the ball every single play, and there's not a damn thing you can do about it. And that happened in Happy Valley, if I remember correctly. So the fact that you think they're going to come out to LA, hey, more power to you.
Listen, I will say, Mark, I might be a little bit biased there. I'm a lifelong Penn State fan, so maybe there's a little bit of bias creeping into that one right there. But no, I think it's a fair call. But some of the James Franklin stuff I think is a little unfair that he loses to Michigan and Ohio State every year, which is like, okay, fine, like they're top 5 teams in the country. Like everyone loses to Michigan and Ohio State. He wins every other game though, right? So I think the offense has some serious question marks next year. I do love the offensive coordinator they got, Andy Kolodnicki coming in from Kansas, but at wide receivers, some serious questions. Offensive line, serious questions. I do think Drew Aller is a lot better than people give him credit for. I think he's just hamstrung by how bad the supporting cast was last year. And then the running back room is really, really good too. And then defensively, they still have some really, really good players. Like Abdul Carter would be a first-round pick. Kevin Winston Jr. might be a first-round pick at safety as well. They have some really, really good players there. So I still think defensively they're going to be really good. Yeah, I just think Penn State's a better team than USC is right now. Like they're a top 10 team, like I said. And I think USC is more of like a top 15, top 20 team. So that again is another toss-up game considering it is at USC. But I'll give my Nittany Lions a slight edge in that game right now.
I'll tell you what, if I don't have you on before then, I will have you on after the game, and we'll discuss it. We'll see how the game went.
Well, I'm down. I'll do it.
Dude, I can't wait. So, again, I want to say thank you so much for coming on. Remind everybody where they can find you when you're not here.
Yeah, you can find all my stuff over at PFF.com. Like I said, right now I am writing the top 10 basically position groups in college football. So quarterback rooms, running back units, receiving corps, offensive lines, defensive lines, linebacker units, secondary. All that will be coming out over the next few weeks at PFF.com. Quarterback rooms will be coming out actually tomorrow. So I'm excited about that. And then, I host the PFF College Football Show, too. And what we're doing over there is we're ranking the top 10 players at every single position in college football. So we just wrapped up our tight end recording today. We already did quarterbacks, running backs, and wide receivers. We're going to do, again, every position in that. And then hopefully some EA College Football 25 video game content coming out soon about like who the highest rated players should be, all that stuff, too. So it is the offseason technically right now, but it is never really the offseason at PFF. We have a lot of stuff coming out throughout the entire year, basically.
Yeah, I have the same motto. There's never an off season here at Locked On USC. So with that, Max, thanks again. We will have you on again soon, sometime during the offseason, and we will definitely have you on after that Penn State game so we'll see who has bragging rights. So till then, everyone, you know what to do.